Yeah, Yarmulke. Do you believe that? All right, part two. Oh, the Dinosaurs The Torah approach. Last time we started off with the three questions. Second question we asked was, how old are they? That's a big problem. When people talk about dinosaurs, they assume automatically dinosaurs, if you believe in dinosaurs, it has to be a contradiction to Torah, because dinosaurs, if you believe in them, they must be millions of years old, and therefore we have to disagree with dinosaurs. So we're going to discuss what is the approach of how old they are, if they are Bichlal, and from there we'll see what the Torah has to say about it. So first of all, starting off with the letter of the Rebbe, where someone basically, there's an opinion out there based on what Chazal say. Chazal say the Eibishter, when he was creating the world, it says an expression "Bayna olamais umachrivon." He was building worlds and destroying them. Now, some people understood that to mean that it means kipshuton, that it means that Hashem, he literally built a physical world, and there was a physical man, and then they were destroyed. And then on top of that layer, he built another world. And then he destroyed that one too, and then another world. And then he created the current world that we're in, that is now, at the time of the letter, Hey Tovshin Tezayin Shana, 5,716 years. By now it's 5,784. So based on this under interpretation of the Zohar, of what it says in Chazal and in Zohar Kabbalah, so we can seemingly answer all those places where seemingly we have proofs that the world has been going on for millions or billions of years. Oh, simple answer. The current, we can have a simple way of reconciling this contradiction. Our physical world that we're aware of, that the Torah was given and all that, is Taka only 5,784 years old. However, you have other worlds that were layers upon layers that were millions of years old. And this Pirush, the Rebbe says, has been brought down in Sfarim and even in Sifrei HaMekubalim HaRishonim. There's some Mekubalim that even interpret this quote from Chazal and the quote in Zohar in such a way that there was actually physical worlds before and we're just upon their layers, and this could answer all those contradictions. However, says the Rebbe, when it comes to Kabbalah, just like in any part of Torah, there can only be a machlokes before there's a psak din according to the Klal of Torah. The moment there's a psak din, l'maisa b'peil, there's only one opinion that we go by, that in a sense is the real opinion 100%. Just like in Shulchan Aruch, you can have sometimes a klal, like Shulchan Aruch tells you to do something, you look into the Gemara, 1 second, it's supposed to be the opposite. The Moshe, we're going to daven Ma'ariv soon, we're going to say Kriyas Shema, and then we're going to say Shemona Esrei. You can look at Gemara and find out there are some say the opposite, say first Shemona Esrei and then say Kriyas Shema. So let's switch it around. That opinion doesn't exist in Maisa. In Halacha, we don't accept that opinion, so for practical purposes, in a pale mamishtik way, we go what the psak din is. We learn the other opinions, and we can discuss it and the reasons behind it, but the pale mamish, only one opinion gets accepted. That's a rule in all sections of Torah. And the same thing applies to the above mentioned question. Till the Arizal, there was a machlokes. And the Rebbe sends it a sefer called Torah Shlema, which he quoted earlier. Torah Shlema is a fascinating sefer. It's an encyclopedia. Every pasuk in Chumash, he brings not just a few Maramekemis. He brings in every pasuk tens of sources of Chazal where they discuss the pasuk, and he brings on this discussion as well. So he brings that there was Takas Svarim that said so. But after the Arizal said his opinion, the Arizal is the final pasuk when it comes to all Kabbalah-related matters. And this is Sai amongst the Ashkenazim, the Alter Rebbe from the Chassidim, and the Gra from the Misnagdim. All the Ashkenazim, and also all the Sfardim. All of them, they accept the Arizal as the final opinion in Kabbalah. And he said his opinion clearly, that it does not mean there was a physical world before us, like the one we have now, because the physical world only exists in the current Shemitah. Shemitah means in the current 7,000 years. So now we're in the year 5784, so that's in the 6,000. So only in the this is the only physical world that had existed. And there was no ever a physical world that existed before that. So therefore, you can't explain in Yonim Shalmais and Mitzias, you can't explain anything unless it fits with the Arizal. You can learn those other opinions and discuss them in theory, but practically speaking, you can't come and interpret when you see a bone or a rock or something which, according to science, is millions of years old and say, okay, fine, that goes according to that opinion. No. And Pa'el Mamish, and the way the world is created, we only have the Shita of the Arizal, and that opinion is completely not acceptable, that there was no physical world, and that answer is not an answer, and therefore there's no other way of saying it other than the world exists only for 5,784 years. Therefore, the question obviously is that all these scientists come along and they say millions, billions, trillions. They throw out numbers right and left, and we're going to discuss what the opinions are, where they get it from, and like we said, what is the response of the Torah to these people that seem to be saying that they seemingly have proof sometimes that the world seems to be so old. So a general way, the way they measure the age of the universe, of the Earth, is if you look at the list. This is like an example people would like try to bring out. If someone is collecting newspapers, every day collects a newspaper, he puts it on the floor. The next day he puts another one and another one and another one. So over time, the oldest newspaper is going to be all the way on the bottom, and the new newspaper is all the way on the top. How much time does it take between the first newspaper and the top newspaper? That depends how much time is between the first and the second newspaper. If it's a daily newspaper, then it's just a day in between. And if you have 100 newspapers, it's 100 days. If every newspaper comes out once a week, then it's 100 weeks. If it's once a month, it's 100 months, and so on and so forth. But the concept is that there's different levels. Based on that, a very big part, when people say the world is millions of years old and they measure, it's based on they look at rocks. And they see the formation of rocks, and they look at the rocks that are lower down, the rocks that are rocks higher up and to the highest, and they see differences in those rocks. And they assume that the lower rocks came many, many years ago, and the rocks on top of them came after, until the rocks all the way on top are the youngest rocks that were, so to speak, deposited there only recently. So they're the young. That's a very big way of measuring. And that's a big way of measuring how they measure also when they find dinosaur fossils. A fossil means a bone that basically turned into stone over time. When they find these fossils, b'derech klal, most of the time they're not testing it for age, the fossil itself. Rather, they test where was it found. Was it found in the highest level of rocks, which are, so to speak, younger rocks, only thousands of years old, or the ones that are younger, that according to them are tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands, or the ones on the bottom that are millions? Meaning, it's already based on a pre-decision that the oldest rocks are millions of years old. And if something is found over there, well, obviously it has to be there. If I'm going to open up the bottom newspaper and I'll find in the bottom newspaper a picture of something, I'll know that that picture was taken that time, because it's on that newspaper, which is all the way on the bottom, which was printed that long ago. The way they understand rocks are made is rocks are in water, and the water over time deposits minerals. Just like if you have a hot water samovar, what's it called, the urn. So if you boil up the urn over time, you'll notice like a little white layer inside your urn. That's rock that results from the water. So what?
Isn't it salt?
If you have salt, it removes the rock. The rock is there. It's minerals. There's different types of minerals and different types of water. So over time, I mean, if you're going to use your urn your entire life, if you never clean it, so that thing will become maybe 1 centimeter. I don't know how big it's going to become. Maybe a few centimeters, won't be huge. But their opinion is that over thousands, again, millions of years, the water deposits the minerals and slowly it accumulates to being rock. That's one of the ways I understand how they measure it. I don't know all the ways they explain it. That's the honest truth. But what I want to point out is that most of the time, the way they date items that they find is based on what layer they found it, and those layers already have official ages, meaning there are certain rocks that they claim that these rocks, in order to be the way they are, they must be X amount of years. So if you find something embedded in that rock, that item must be the same age as that rock. So that's how they usually measure. So the original measuring was done on the rock, and now they're just relying on that to give other things the same age. That's a lot of times how they measure. Yeah?
Didn't Hashem create the world like ready-made?
We're going to talk about that later. It's one of the ways of trying to explain this thing.
I thought it was a big bang.
Huh?
Thought it was a big bang.
What else did you think? Oh, you don't want to hear that. Another way of measuring is a more complicated way, and this is actually the way they do it when they want to measure a specific fossil, a specific bone, is called radiometric measurement. Now or dating. This is actually very complicated. There's a more simple one which is called carbon dating. A lot of times you hear they say this is 2,000 years old, 3,000 years old, 3,200 years old. It's based on the fact that every atom is radioactive and there's basically radiation coming out of it, and it slowly disappears. It's al derech. Maybe a simple example. If you see a cup of Coke on the table, and you go over and you take a sip of the Coke, if you can see that it's full of what we call gas or the fizz, then you know it must have been poured into this cup just recently. But if it's what's it called, flat, if that's what the term they use, if the Coke is flat, you can assume that it's probably been out there the whole night. If it's a little bit of fizz, then you could say, okay, but it's probably out for an hour or two. You basically start feeling how much of the gas is released. So similarly, they're able to figure out based on their understanding of how much was released, and that based on that. Now it's very complicated, a lot of details. What's called decay, how each atom decays, and there's something called the half-life and isotopes. It's really complicated, and I tried preparing this. I tried speaking to people and explained, and while I was into it, I understood somewhat a little bit of what's going on over here. But again, like whoever was last night by the shir, there's a lot of seichel involved. It's not hakachinics. It's theories. It's all can be argued with. It'll all be challenged. But it's seichel that they're using based on what they're saying. This is the way it seems that it should have been. And based on that, if you see that it takes this amount of time, then it must be that that this is what happens. So if just like by us, we see that the coke is flat. We know it's been out for a day or two. So they, based on that, they say, well, if it has this amount of decay, there must be X amount of years old. But it's radioactive is very, very detailed and it's very complicated. But that's another way of the measure. So these are the two basic ways, if I understand correctly, of measuring the ancient age of bones. Is A, where they're found, which is the most common way, based on which stones they're found within, and B, actually testing it with radioactive radiometric testing. There's another way, carbon dating. Carbon dating is another, same general idea. The difference is that carbon does not work for bones, for dinosaur bones, because according to them it's too old, so you can't measure it anymore. But basically there's no, the carbon decay that's measured is not visible over there. So that's another way. So we're going to have three answers or three approaches maybe to say to this question about what is the age of the dinosaurs, meaning that the scientists now come and they find these fossils and they claim based on where they're found in the rocks and based on their testing of the radiometric testing, they say that it's millions of years old. What is the response that we can answer, thus that we believe what the Torah says and the way that I've explained in the letter before, that the world is only this amount of time. So the first simple answer is just to claim that they made a mistake in calculation, they do not know what they're doing. Now, it's an easy thing to say if you don't understand the calculations, which many people just throw that out there. They have no idea what they're talking about, but it's not such an educated way of responding. Oh, you know what we're talking about. Huh? That's true. But to say that without knowing why they're saying that is just as ignorant as making the calculation. Hear what they have to say, hear the calculations, and then say you made a mistake, and prove why. Saying a mistake without understanding is a bit lame. It's like stam hacking. It's like two Bachram arguing about something they have no clue what they're talking about. So just whatever. Yeah, you can do that, but it's not an educated way of doing it. However, there is such an approach. But actually, there's a group of Christians, lahavdil, that they have actually. There's a huge. If you see the picture of the building over there, this is a huge institute which is dedicated to believing in the Torah kipshutai. That these are big scientists. Choshev mentioned they all have PhDs in Al Zachem, and these people believe kipshutei that the world is created 5,784 years ago, not a day more than that. And they have studied the subject, and they put out a book, Rethinking Radiometric Dating. They don't hack a China. Oh, you're hacking a China. You guys are making up stuff. No, they went through the subject properly, and they studied it thoroughly, and they came up with their answers and explainings of why they're saying that what you're saying is not right. So that's partially, this is like to understand what they're saying, what they're answering. Obviously, the scientists that don't believe in Torah, they respond that this book is Baba Meiser, what they're talking about. But that's already scientists arguing with each other. It's an educated debate, and you have educated people that debate these concepts, and they're based on these conversations, which very hard to understand how it works with the radiometric dating and all those things. But these are people that spend a lot of time, and you can hear podcasts of Christians going through explaining slowly but surely what these things are. It's hard to understand. It depends, you have to many hours to understand a lot of things, but the point is that from a scientific perspective, there's room to say that there are many mistakes involved in the official way of dating, radiometric dating, or the carbon dating, and so on. That's one answer. The second general answer is the flood is the Mabul. So just a short chazara on the Mabul that we all know. When Noach was 600 years old, second month, the 17th day, what Rashi says ends up being Gizayin Cheshvan. On that day, all the openings of the ground of underneath opened up, and the water came shooting up. And the heavens opened up, and they came down, pouring down. It continued raining and pouring for 40 days and 40 nights. pasuk says the Mabul was on the ground for 40 days, and it eventually lifted the teva. And then the pasuk says, "Vayikberu hamayim." This is like, these words are key. Vayikberu hamayim. The waters were rough, running around. Vayirbu ma'od al haaretz. Meaning it wasn't just a lot of water. It was like a tornado, like a hurricane. It's knocking things down and uprooting. So today it uproots buildings, but if it's a very strong tornado, a very strong hurricane, it's everything else al haaretz. That's the main part of the story we always talk about. But pasuk Yotes, it's not just that they rained very, very high above the ground. They were tearing up the ground. The water was tearing up just like a tornado. It can knock down a building. It can knock down a mountain too. It can uproot stones. It can uproot trees. It can uproot any kind of structure and turn things upside down. Again, the main message of the pasuk is Vayichusu kalahorim agvoim, how high the waters went, and everything was covered, and everything was, and it was chameshes riyama milamayla. But don't forget, a big part of the story is the waters and the hurricanes and tornadoes down here that were destroying the land that we know that Noach had lived upon before him.
What chameshes riyama? What did it say here?
That's the psukim, that the water ended up being 15 amas above the highest mountains.
And it destroyed them?
It doesn't say that it destroyed the mountains, but it's understood from the pasuk Vayikberu hamayim that there was a lot of destruction. It's understood that these storms weren't just pouring down regular rain. It was a lot of winds, and the winds can be very powerful, as we know from hurricanes. We just had what was it, last week? We had the hurricane, the warning. Whatever, I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a town like 3 hours away from here. It's Shreklach. It's called Greenfield, Iowa. You can look it up. And the whole city was destroyed. It's freaky. If a chas v'shalom could have happened here, who knows what would have happened? House after house is destroyed. Huh?
It's in Texas.
Texas, it happens every once in a while. It's very, but so over there, it could be huge buildings that are just destroyed to nothing. But you can imagine the same thing can happen to a mountain. Especially these tornadoes usually last just for a few minutes, and they cause this destruction. I mean, wherever they are, they last for more than that altogether. Huh?
What does this have to do with?
We'll get to that. 1 second, one at a time. You're jumping the gun.
I'm saying, so what? There was water. What does that have to do with the skeletons in the ground? Not skeletons.
Like I said, wait till we're done, and you'll see. You're asking the middle of the story.
If that's the case, then how did the table make land?
That was part of the miracle. Because obviously not every mountain was destroyed. That's clear. And the pasuk says there was 15 amas above mountains. But I'm just pointing out from the Vayikberu hamayim, it wasn't just rain. There was a lot of tornadoes and thunderstorms and hurricanes or whatever we call them. But it was obviously causing a lot of damage to the earth. I'm teaching it now, as we'll soon see what the Mefarshim say. As a result, Vayikva kol basar haremus al haaretz, all living things died. Yeah, birds and animals and insects and all the humans, whatever had a nishmas ruach chaim ba'apa, whatever had any kind of soul in itself, whatever was on the dry land died. And Hashem vayimach, this is a key word also. Vayimach es kol yakum. He erased, so to speak, the entire universe or the entire earth. Asher al pnei ha'adam, or whatever is on the ground, including some of the ground, from Adam to all the living things. Vayimochu min haaretz. Again, I'm stressing these points because we're going to get back to them in a little bit. How it wasn't just that there was rain and everyone just drowned from the rain, but it was a lot of winds and destruction that was happening to the ground and earth as well. And the pasuk concludes, and Noach remained in the teva. And then an important detail: Vayikru hamayim al haaretz chamishim asim. It was a very long time that these things were going on. Now, just like we have tornadoes above ground, there's underground also. You have tsunamis. You have things going on over there under the oceans. We know it's not spoken about, but there's a lot of things going on over there. There's also rivers under the oceans. Yeah, if you read enough Zmans and Makivs, you'll find those kind of stuff. There's a lot of things going underground, and it was continuing for 150 days.
Was it 40 days?
Well, 40 days was the rain coming down, but for 150 days there was still a lot of wind and things moving all over the place.
Is there a river in the water?
You have to read Zmans for that. That's not for now. So comes along the Malbim. How do you read a Zman? It's very possible. What?
What's his name?
The Malbim, his name was Meir Leibush ben Yechiel Michel. And he wrote a sefer on Tanakh, a Pirush on Tanakh, one of the best Pirushim on Tanakh that Rebbe quotes him all the time. And he had a very unique approach. He tried explaining basically a kind of art scroll to Tanakh, like adding a lot of details and explaining it more, and used the opportunity to talk about other things at the same time. And he was also in the time when the evolutions people started coming up with their ideas. At the same time, his name was Darwin. So he had to deal with these people. He was a very big supporter of the Torah and Yiddishkeit, meaning a believer and one of the big faces to argue. So he writes in his pshat in the pasuk like this: Vayimach. He says, "Achar shemesu kulam." This is after everybody died. It was destroyed. He says, "Nimchu gam gufeiseim." Their bodies were destroyed. Nothing should remain from them. Here was the opposite. My creation, first the animals were created, then Adam was created. Here, Adam was all the humans, all the people were destroyed first. The person is naturally weaker than other animals, and then the animals which are stronger died, and then birds and insects, which since they're smaller, they can have an easier time to hide amongst places and in caves. They lasted for longer. And then he continues, and this was continued that. Even though there's a lot of them, I'm missing the words that are being blocked over here, I can't get to it, but a lot of them, their strong bones remained and they were not destroyed, but they were nemoichu min haaretz, eventually was all wiped away. Because of all the water, they were all their carcasses were brought down to the depths of everywhere, and most of them were swallowed up underground. And like we said, the ground that opened up from all these for the waters, for the springs, and a lot of them fell down when the bones sunk to the bottom. They went thousands of amas down. Till when Noach came out of the Teva, he didn't see any dead bodies and any dead bones all over the place of all the animals that existed before the Mabel. Here he says, here he's alluding to the fact that he's understanding that there were huge creatures before the Mabul, and that these bones were disappeared because most of them disappeared they sunk down to the water back when everything closed up.
Didn't it say before the Mabul, didn't Hashem command Noach to take one of each species?
That's a good question. Now we're going to talk about it in the next year. That's not for this year. A good question. We'll talk about it later. Yeah.
Also, do we know where they landed on the boat?
It says on the mountain of Ararat. There's a mountain in Turkey which is called Mount Ararat, which people claim is the same mountain, but there's a lot of it's a topic. It's a separate shear, so to speak.
Is the Malbim a reliable source? He's just from a Farish? Is this like a
He's a Mefarish. He doesn't bring sources. No, he's his own Pirush. He's his own Pirush. He has his own interpretations. And if you want to disagree, you're welcome.
So based on what are we relying on?
Based on what I'm relying, what he said till now was pretty much basic. It makes sense to say so. He's interpreting based on the observations, and he's accepting this pshat. You want to argue, you can. Yes, the Malbim is not a Rishon. He's an Achron, and you can argue. But I'm reading his opinion. You can argue with me too. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, was he a tzaddik or who is he?
He was a Rav in the times of the Rebbe Maharash. He wasn't a tzaddik. He was a Yid that his whole life was dedicated to Torah and spreading Yiddishkeit, and he gives us a pirush. What he's saying is the Torah Misinai. I didn't say that. Is it acceptable by Klal Yisrael? Yes. Does it mean that we accepted 100% every last detail? Can you not argue? No. You could argue if you want with the Malbim. Many Mefarshim do on many times. It's not a problem. But I'm giving you his interpretation, what he wants to say, which he usually uses logic in whatever he says. A lot of times, for example, Megillas Esther, he goes through the story of Megillas Esther, and he presents you a story they never heard before. Most Baruch know the story of Megillas Esther from the Purim tape. He gives you a new story based on the Psukim and explains things. So it's mostly logic. He'll use Chazal also a little bit, but he mostly tries to use Seichel to interpret things. So he's doing the same thing over here, which, like I said, you can argue, but what he's saying, I think, makes a lot of sense. And when I stressed those words in the Psukim before, you can disagree with me. Meaning, it doesn't say anywhere that there was actual tornadoes and hurricanes. But if you read the words the way I read them, it makes so much sense to teach it that way. You could argue, but I guess
Use him as a reliable source?
the Rebbe brings him in Sichis to explain Torah. Not that he's the Torah Misina. The Rebbe brings all the Mefarshim. And I shouldn't say all the Mefarshim, but the Rebbe brings them all the time, and everyone brings them all the time. He's an accepted Pirush by Klal Yisrael. Every Furuma Yid knows that the Malbim, learns the Malbim from time to time, they bring his Pirush. Do you agree with him? Just like you have to agree with any Mefarshim. I shouldn't say can't. It's different. You can't. It's not like Rashi that you can't argue with Rashi. Rashi is a the Rishonim. Rishonim is a different. They have Koyach of Ruach HaKodesh. He's after that era. By him, we don't say what he wrote is with Ruach HaKodesh. It was his logic that he used and his Torah that he knew, which was a big scholar. So he knew a lot. He knew the whole Torah. So he's using based on all of his knowledge and his logic, his interpretation. Yeah. So he continues and he says like this: "Ve'edus Hashem ne'emana machkim aspesi." The words of the Torah is believed, and it can make the stupid, make them smart. Lahashiv davar lachachmei hageologia. This is going to be his opportunity to respond to the geologists. Those that study what I said before, the stones and all that, the ages of stones, they are called geologists. People that study geology. I think I'm saying it right.
Archaeology.
Huh?
How do you pronounce archaeology?
No, archaeology is trying to find things that are deep down, what's underground. Geology is taking a stone and studying the actual makeup of the stone and knowing how old the stone is, how did it get here, and all that. It's a different science. Shechayfrim be'imkei ha'adama, they dig down into the ground. Umoitzim atzomis gdoilis me'anokim, they find these huge bones from giants, or balachaim gdoilim, and huge creatures. Shenevdu min ha'aretz ve'einam oid mimei ha'mabel ve'elach, they're gone from the times of the Mabel. We don't see these things anymore. And these people are finding these bones when they're digging. I have this over there. And as a result, I don't think I could. I tried last time. No, it doesn't. So they basically have this understanding that the Adama, the land, has minim. Like I said before, the different layers of the ground. So here in the picture, I have no idea what all these words mean over here. But basically they have all these. They measure the ground by different types. If you dig down, there's basically they can tell you, again, this is scientific, they can start digging and tell you what to expect, what kind of stone you'll meet after digging for 5 meters, 10 meters, and they have these names and these ages for each one of these stones. As I said before, how do they measure the things that are found? Based on the Eichus HaAdama, based on the type of earth, a stone that they found it in, they found the bones in that layer, based on that. Saying the world is existing for thousands or millions of years, and therefore they based on that say, that all these animals exist way more than 5,700, whatever the time of the Malbim was, less than that, but that's their interpretation. So like we said, this is the Malbim saying they find all these bones in this layer of rock, and based on that, they're teaching and saying how old the rocks are. The kol zeh hevel varik, says the Malbim, this is all Baba Maisis. And the Mabul, like we said, the ground opened up and all the springs were coming open. Because of all the earthquakes and things that were happening then. And everything was turned upside down. That's what I was teaching before in the words of the Pasuk, that these tornadoes and earthquakes and hurricanes were turning everything upside down. And that's what caused all these bones of these creatures to fall down so low to such low places. I have to remember not to start using the left side always. So you have these people that are trying to figure out.
This is still the Malbim?
This is all the Malbim, yeah. All the words of the Malbim. He's describing, already in those times, they were making up these, that they were studying in this kind of way. So if you think about, he's saying the cheshbonis of the 150 days of the water standing and running all over the place, so they don't take that into consideration. So therefore all this darim that these chokrim are calculating, and all the cheshbonis are all based on, this is what he's pointing out, they're based on the regular circumstances that we're familiar with now. But if they don't take into consideration these huge catastrophic events, this changing of the hurricanes and all those things, and the ground opening up and earthquakes, so based on that, all their calculations are wrong. If they would be smart enough, they would see how Maaseh Hashem, and how Hashem made miracles to the depths. So basically he's telling us that your calculations are based on observing the way things are now. But if you don't, if it's like someone who's going to come to open up a can of soda that's flat, a cup of soda that's flat, and assume that this cup of soda must be here for 2 days. But what happens if somebody just, shook the soda back and forth 100 times at the can and then opened it up and then somehow removed it quicker? You don't know. There might be other ways of doing things that you're not familiar with. Yeah, I understand your assumption, because usually Coke has gas and this one doesn't have, so it makes sense to assume that it's this amount old. But if we know that there were some major events that happened, then how do you know how to calculate those events? And things were up and down, and therefore everything could be very different.
What was the claim again?
Who's they?
Like, you're saying they're claiming like a false claim?
They're claiming that if they find bones on a certain level, those bones must be the age of that level. So he's saying that the bones could have gone down there because the earth opened up its mouth and fall all the way down there. Everything was turned upside down, and the measurements are different. A similar answer that Rebbe says, one cannot exclude the possibility that dinosaurs existed. This letters in Tafshin Chav Beis. And the Rebbe says they became fossilized, meaning that the bones turned into stones under terrific natural catalysms in the course of a few years rather than in millions of years. since we have no conceivable measurements of criteria of calculation of these unknown conditions. The Rebbe basically says like science can only describe what it sees, and you can try to extrapolate based on what I see over there. I can look over there, but if you don't know how things were over there, you never exist at such extreme temperatures. A lot of times scientists want to figure something out, so they recreate the situation in order to see what will happen in the situation. But if they can't recreate the situation, how can they measure? They don't know. They can't measure. They can't recreate a marble. They can't recreate such a situation with. And also, when it comes to the minerals, the hot springs come from underground. We even they claim that there's all these gases and all these things underground, and they come up together with the water, with this heat, intense heat. It can change things very differently. Even till today, we know there's Yellowstone National Park. Over there, they have these the hot springs where they have all these minerals. Recently, it can be shown that you can put in like a piece of metal or something. It'll be there for a few months and it'll come out as a fossil. Fossil means it'll turn into stone after a few months. So today you see a fossil, it must be millions of years old. No, it can be in a few months it can happen. The right conditions. So they know that. So here, but they're making other calculations based on what they know. But the Rebbe is saying that things you don't know. If the Mabul was something which was a situation which was completely different than what we have any idea. So you can't measure what the effects are. And therefore, the calculations are partially wrong because of this cheshbon we're saying now. So I want to point out, the first thing that we said was, even without the Mabul, the first answer was, even without the Mabul, your calculations are off. The second opinion is that based on that your calculations are right if you don't take into consideration the Mabul. But if you know the Mabul, so there's another example people use to explain this, is that if you observe someone at the age of 15 years old, till the age of 20 years old, and you see how much he grows. How many inches do you grow from the age of 15 to the age of 20? Not too much, right? I would say maybe 4 inches, not too much. So I make the calculation, okay, so in 5 years, this person grew 4 inches. Well, when I measured him originally at 15 years old, he was already 5'8". Oh, that means that how many years did he have to live? So 5'8" is that amount of inches. So for every 4 inches, he grew those amount of years. So you can't, but you don't know what happened in the past. He grew a lot quicker in the previous times. And when he was born, he was already a certain size, and you don't know, and he grows quicker in previous ages. So if all your data is based on this age, how can you extrapolate and say what happened then? You don't know what was going on then. So that's what we're saying now. So again, the first knowledge is you're making a mistake, which, like I said, you have to learn their shidduch, what they're saying, their radiometric testing. The second opinion is, yes, based on your data, your calculations are accurate, but you don't know what happened before, and therefore your measurements would have been different based on if you know those calculations. Now, I just want to share a word that I thought of that we have in the famous Sikha, the Rebbe talks about Deir HaMabul and Deir HaFlaga. Deir HaMabul is a generation right before the flood. Deir HaFlaga was afterwards the people that they wanted to build a tower to go fight against Hashem. So the Rebbe points out that Deir HaMabul loy pashtu yad ba'ikar. They did not deny Hashem, meaning they were terrible people, they were Rishoyim, but their main issue was not Avodah Zarah. Their main issue was hurting each other, Gneva, Gezel, Mala, Horetz, Chamos. That was the main thing. However, their punishment was nevdu min ha'olam. They were completely destroyed from this world, Mabul. And then the Rebbe says, Yesh Aymin, there's an opinion that says they have a chelik leilam haba. There's an opinion that Deir HaMabul will go to Gan Eden. However, Deir HaFlaga, their issue was they were trying to fight against Hashem. They were trying to deny Hashem's power over the world. And they were not destroyed from this world. They remained in this world. They were just chased all over the place. As we know, the punishment, that they were spread all over the world. And by them it says, clearly, they have no, nothing against they for sure have no chelik in Elam Haba. So, what? Yeah, but that wasn't their main Aved. The main Aved, what they got punished for, is the fact that they were doing a Gezel. Rashi says, the punishment was for the Gezel. Versus the Deir HaFlaga, the punishment was trying to go against Hashem.
Just Gezel?
Their main Aveda. I can keep pointing out. They did other Avedas too, but that was the main thing. What the Pasuk says. But the Pasuk stresses the word Chamos, which means Gezel, and Rashi says, Lo nechtam dinam ela la Gezel. So the word that I wanted to share was that Deir HaMabul, that they were, they didn't deny Hashem, but now as a result of the Mabul, Kilo, it's that supports, so to speak, the opinion to believe in Hashem. Once you, not only was there Aveda not so much against Hashem, their punishment didn't really cause to go against Hashem. Adarabah, but the punishment in a way gives an answer for people to believe in Hashem, because if you believe in the Mabul, then like we said before, it answers everything. Versus Deir Afloga, that they went against Hashem in a way that's spreading people over the world. That's Kivyachal, one of the problems that people have, how it takes so long for the people to get there. V'chulu v'chulu. So Akapani, the Stama Vort, I don't know if I explained myself properly, but Stama Maimer Amuzgar. That was answer number 2. Answer number 3, it was mentioned before, is that Hashem created the world already at a specific age. Hashem created the world old, so to speak. According to this answer, the calculations are correct. Indeed, everything is millions of years old. However, it's millions of years old in when it was created. And now it just had another few thousand years on top of it. The Rebbe brings this answer as well, based on the letter that we read last time, that the Rebbe says Hashem could be that Hashem created already fossils, bones, or skeletons for reasons best known to Him, just as He created other things that are already alive and a complete man, and just like He created ready products such as coal, oil, and diamonds, which, as far as scientists explain, oil and coal and diamonds also have to go through millions of years to evolve to turn into whatever they are. So the Rebbe says, just like we believe that these things were created from Hashem as is, that the famous Baal Shem Tov says that everything is, you have some tons of treasures in the ground. If you dig up, besides oil that you can find in places, you can find rocks and diamonds and other things. So there's obviously all is created by Hashem originally. So Hashem can also created these things already, meaning He created them already at that age or an older age. And this explanation is based on Chazal, famous Medrash. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Adam v'Chava ki bnei esrim shana nivru. Adam and Chava were created at the age of 20 years old. What does it mean 20? They were created, the moment they were created, they were only 5 seconds old. They're already 20 years old. The answer is they were created, and what a usual person takes 20 years to reach a certain level of maturity in his body and whatever, they were created at that stage already the moment they were created. So if someone would have met Adam Rishon a minute after he was born, he would have assumed he's already 20 years old. Really, he was 1 minute old. But Hashem created them at that age. So the same idea over here, that Hashem could have created these bones and this, based on the radiometric testing with the radioactive decay, He could have created the Chatchila without all of this radioactivity. And therefore, indeed, He created a 1,000,000-year-old stone. He created a 500,000-year-old stone, and so on.
But it's not million years old to begin with. It's just looks like it.
Correct. Not just it looks like it has the same characteristics of it. Adam Rishon was created at the age of 20. He didn't just look like he was 20. He had the same body of a regular 20-year-old. So over here also, it has the structure, the atomic structure of a stone that would have lasted 1,000,000 years old. Again, when you're saying 20 years old, what do you mean? It's actually been in this world for 20 years? Obviously, no. So Adam wasn't. He was only 1 minute old. But you're saying a 20-year-old, a healthy 20-year-old, his body has a certain functionality, a certain way, a certain body weight, a certain mass, a certain height, all certain things that are expected from a 20-year-old. He has the body of a 20-year-old. He's created in that kind of body. So this stone was created with the characteristics of a stone that would take 1 billion years to get to that stage. So it was created at that point. And according to this, we don't have to say the Mabul changed it. No, the Mabul didn't change anything. It was the right age, and this is how it was created. And this is elaborated in other places in Chazal as well.
So what did the Mabul accomplish?
And this, according to this approach, nothing. The Mabul was meant to just destroy the people of the time. It wasn't meant to change anything else. It might have affected somewhat, but at this approach, we're not using the Mabul as an answer to the question. We're saying that Hashem created this age.
Is it another answer?
This is a third answer, yes, a third answer. Huh? There's only 3 answers. This is we're elaborating on the third answer, other places from Chazal. This is not the topic of this conversation. The topic over here is only one question. We asked, how old are they? Remember, at the beginning of the class, we mentioned this. There's 3 questions. This question is only the second question. That will be next week in Mitzvah.
What's the third question?
Oh, I thought we were already on the class.
No, this is the second one. You weren't at the beginning, it's very clear, part 2. Amr Rabbi Shua ben Levi. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, Kol ma'aseh bereishis b'keimosa nivru, b'daita nivru, b'tzimyoinu nivru. Same idea. Everything the previous Medrash report was only about Adam and Chava, that they were created at the age of 20. But Rabbi Shua ben Levi, the Gemara Chulin says, everything in ma'aseh bereishis was created b'keimosa in its full state, b'daita in its full social maturity, meaning other animals, b'tzivyoinu in their full force. They were completed in a full shape and form of wherever Hashem wanted them to be at that time. And Chazal, Rabbi Gershom has a pshat over here, and he says, what it means is, everything was included within him from day one. He was created with that. The whole world has everything that's supposed to be. Nothing new was under the sun. Everything was already there. So that is basically the third answer. Just want to just finish off to summarize. We have three answers. I'll say them again in a minute. Three answers of how Yitachin. The scientists say it's millions of years old. One answer is they're making wrong calculations. Second answer is that they're only calculating without taking the Mabul into consideration. Once you consider the Mabul, their calculations are off. Number three, yes, they're right. Hashem created the world 5,000 years ago, and He created it already at the age of millions of years old. Now, she wanted to share this big taina against the people that claim that dinosaurs are millions of years old. So, like I said, there's a whole bunch of scientists that are believers in the Torah, and they want to fight back. So, what are they fighting back? Their fight back is to say, according to that opinion, that the dinosaurs are millions of years old. So, based on that, we'll talk about it next time also a little bit. But basically, according to that, dinosaurs have been extinct, do not exist for, according to them, millions of years. That means in the past million years, there have been no dinosaurs. Now, Yachadim Zeh, human beings, according to them, only came into existence a few 100,000 years ago. So the human beings definitely, according to them, never saw any dinosaurs. Problem is that there are a number of inscriptions, of engravings that have been found over a few hundred years ago. A few hundred years ago is before scientists started finding dinosaur fossils and making all these pictures of dinosaurs that we spoke about last year, where they just make up these pictures of what they look like. Rather, there's things of art of hundreds of years ago, which again, it's before the scientists have started describing what they see, but at the same time, there's pictures of dinosaurs. So here are three of the famous rayas, so to speak. There's I don't know pronounce this word, petroglyph and Natural Bridges, Utah. You have a picture over there, looks like a dinosaur. The middle is called the Ika stones. On the right is something in Cambodia, some kind of temple, which looks like another dinosaur. So if these are obviously human beings have been drawing these things. They must have seen them. So this is... But monkeys draw them? Monkeys also didn't exist together with dinosaurs.
When did humans come into existence in this?
According to their opinion, way after dinosaurs. I don't remember the numbers right now, what they say, but they agree that's not. This is actually when there's the debates amongst the believers in Torah, the Torah account versus them. This is one of the big tainas that they throw back at them. That they tell them, look at all these things. All these things prove that, and this is that they feel, that the people that believe in science, they feel threatened. This is like a big kasha to them, haytachin, that there are human beings that apparently saw dinosaurs. It's a thing. It's a heavy question that they have no answer to. They're only.
You can't say it comes from the evolutionary being we come from.
What again?
No,
You can't say
the
it
whole
comes from
dinosaurs were millions, we were only thousands.
So we
We're
come
like
from something,
100,000.
obviously. So that something millions of years ago is what the truth is.
No, according to
First
them.
intelligent humans were only like 100,000 years
Yeah,
old.
according to them, that's impossible. They agree that that's not an option. They agree that this couldn't have been drawn by any power, any creature that saw the dinosaurs. They agree with that.
Maybe someone made recently and just took a picture and said.
Let's see what we have to say. So again, this is a big taina. This is a big taina against them, and there's something which they have to grapple with. And every time there is any kind of discovery of something ancient which has pictures of dinosaurs, it becomes a big takasha against them, where they have this issue. How are they going to reconcile to explain? Let me finish speaking, and then we'll see. Yeah, that's usually an option, right? So the simple answer, what they always answer, is that all these things are misrepresentations or hoaxes. They basically show you back and forth. The picture on the left, this is a real life picture. So making from this real life into that picture, you have to. This has to be really. You have to be really creative to come. The original on the top left is not really the original. This is the original. The picture on the left. So Mamela, you can see that it's a real stretch of the imagination. This is an actual picture. The middle one, the Ika stones, it was proven to be a hoax. That people recently went and they drew these stones, and they made, just like we had faking the dinosaurs themselves, putting new species together, people faking the other way around. And the one on the right, which is one of the strong arguments, that's definitely very ancient, but they basically claim that it's really a rhinoceros, and those designs on top are not what we call dinosaurs are just a design. I think it's basically rhinoceros. It could be a warthog. I'm pretty sure that thing on the top is supposed to be its horn of. Right? That's what they try to say, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, it's in those areas where they have rhinos in Africa somewhere, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, in that same place where they have this drawing, it's like some kind of temple. They have a few other ones which also have that design on top of it. So that's what basically say, if it has all the design, it's not really supposed to be part of the animal, it's just designed around the animal. But again, the people that believe in the scientific approach, this is a tiny, they have no other answer besides trying to debunk and say these are all either misinterpretations or hoaxes, and they're on the defense from here. This is definitely something which they don't have an answer for, meaning if you're going to attack and find something archaeological which has a few hundred years old and a picture of a human and a dinosaur, that's going to be a big kasha to them, and people still bring some of them, and their response is just like we say, "Oh, you guys, you know, what you're talking about." They respond to something, "Oh, you're hacking the Shining, it's a hoax, it's made up." That they basically speak the same language back to us, the believers, in this kind of thing. So that's again, each stone, each the discovery, whatever they'll find, has to be analyzed for itself, and you can argue back and forth if it's real or not. But that's just wanted to share. That's another part of this conversation.
What do they think is the second version?
That was a hoax. It was done recently, like maybe 100 years ago or 50 years ago.
What is it really?
50 years ago, someone took or maybe less, someone took a black rock and a white marker, or I chiseled out and made a picture of what this is.
Wait, these three things were all debunked? That you showed us a second ago?
Yeah, these are the same three things. The one on the left is the same here on the left.
So all three of these were debunked?
Debunked, if you accept they're debunked, meaning these three represent.
Debunking?
What?
They made up that this is really something else?
You said it's fake.
Lo Ivanti. These three things are being brought as proofs that it's ancient. The response of the believers in science, this is their response. The one on the left is a misinterpretation. The one in the middle is a hoax. That pretty much is for sure.
Really the original
Yeah,
red thing?
Yeah.
So then how is it a misinterpretation? How is that not?
But on the other hand, if you look at the way they interpret things and they see something that we read last night by the stars, they make these ideas based on the same idea. Scientific will also make these assumptions that if it looks like this, then it's probably like
How
this.
big is that
So
thing in real life?
I don't remember.
Theories.
No, but
A lot of it is theories. Now, again, when it's presented like this, it looks so much like a dinosaur. But when it's presented in real life, so when you look at some of their proofs, it also seems like such a strong proof. When you get back to the source, it'll look just as clear as this. So
different colors.
yeah, sometimes you have lighting; it changes the color. The middle one is definitely proven to be a hoax, meaning that's for sure someone made up. But the one on the right is up for debate. I mean, this picture was photoshopped; they removed those pieces. So these pieces in the real picture are the way it is now. Over here with these things on top of it. The question is if this is meant to be part of the animal or meant to be part of the design, which like other things as well. So that's by Photoshop, we removed them to show you what it really looks like and what it's supposed to be. But again, what I want to bring out is that they're on the defense. That this is a kinda against them. I'm not the
It doesn't make up something and say now you're on the defense.
what?
It doesn't make something up and say now you're on the defense.
But
Again, this thing was not made up. The one on the right is not made up. That's an ancient drawing, which seems to be a very big time against them. No one made this up.
Even if that is very ancient,
Yeah.
that does not look like a dinosaur.
There are I forget what they're called. There's dinosaurs that look exactly like
It
that.
looks like a pig with flaps on
Exactly
the
like
back.
that.
and there are dinosaurs that look like that.
There are dinosaurs that are described. Definitely dinosaurs look like that. There's no question about it. For sure, looks like a dinosaur. That's not the argument.
Now, it's not a dinosaur that look like that.
There's many species that were developed that they found. There's a species I forget what it's called. No. It's one of the very common species that look like that with those bumps on its back. That's a distinct look of a dinosaur. When you saw it the first time, you thought it was a dinosaur. Only when you saw it like this, you saw it differently. That's what they did it like. They wanted to show you that is how we're supposed to look at it.
And one animal looks like the other animal, you know?
This one?
Yeah.
No, but this is not. This looks like a dinosaur.
I'm
But
saying,
remember,
yeah.
but this is the way it really looks in real life.
Yeah, I know.
So put together this into that image, it's I keep going back there. It's a stretch to decide that they highlighted it very much to make it look like
The
that.
third one is for sure like ancient and it looks like this.
The one all the way on the right is for sure ancient. The one on the left, the one on the left and right are for sure ancient. But they claim that it's misinterpretations. The one on the left they're saying is you just misinterpreted. It could just happen to be scratched off. The one on the right it's supposed to be a rhinoceros or a pig, whatever. The one in the middle is for sure a hoax. Again, there's tons and tons of proofs, meaning of ancient things that have been found. And just like Lahavdil, the Torah or the Lahavdil, the Christians, are going to defend every one of their proofs how the world is old, and they're going to explain why it's really not old. Same thing there. They become any discovery of ancient discoveries which seem to imply that they're dinosaurs, that humans saw dinosaurs. They respond. They are on their defense. They have to come up with answers. And their two answers are always the same. Either it's a misinterpretation or it's a hoax. That's what they always end up saying. Or they have that, or they'll be believers. We have no answer. Say that. Well, you still believe that the world is basically result. They did that themselves.
If they found magic bones, maybe they
We'll get back to that later, okay?
What about the option like connecting the dots to make like giants? The giants were before the Marvel.
What are you asking?
It wasn't it before the Marvel. Human beings were giants.
No.
So maybe they found if they found bones that were really from that time, maybe it's from a human being.
We spoke about this last time. That we said that could be that they misinterpreted that they put the bones together. Final question that they against those that say the sign that dinosaurs are so ancient and humans never met dinosaurs is that there are many legends and myths in many cultures that many of these cultures have dinosaurs part of their culture. Lahavdil. We have the aim. We spoke about that last year. The whole medrash, like that just came out of nowhere. Like b'derech klal, there's something there, and people might elaborate and exaggerate a little bit, but came out of nowhere. And so many different legends and myths. Lahavdil. Again, the Mabul, for example. The Mabul, someone did the research and he found that there are 217 different religions around the world unrelated to each other that all believe in the concept of the Mabul in different ways, with the Noach, with the Teva, exactly. But it's such a major thing. Everyone knew about it, and it all developed over time. There's a variation of the story. But it didn't come out of nowhere. Make up a story like that from nowhere, how are you going to get to such a thing? Similarly, over here, the fact that dinosaurs are many, many legends, many, many myths, have many cultures, and different, unrelated, have this concept of dinosaurs, like they all made it up, they all just were fooled, they all just saw things and they misinterpreted things. This is another scientific claim that humans have seen dinosaurs. Again, this is all an assumption that dinosaurs existed. But this, I'm just saying, I'm making this opinion. I don't know if people are getting attacking me personally, but I'm just trying to share the opinions. This is an opinion of those that believe in the Torah, and they believe that dinosaurs existed. They have a taina to those that believe that they can't work together by saying, then how can it be? And scientifically, this is a very strong argument when a whole bunch of people in different countries and different cultures, not related to each other, all come up with the same approach, the same ideas. Then how did they get to that idea? They were, according to them, they were all separate together. How did they come up with the same idea? There has to be some kernel of truth to it. Some kind of dinosaurs existed in the not so distant past, and people saw them, and therefore, it's the whole millions is completely extra. Again, just another two tinus, so to speak, against those that say that dinosaurs existed millions of years ago and not recently, because A, all the things that have been found which seemingly imply that, and two, because so they answer this as well, that people make up things, and that there just happens to be a whole bunch of people have the same okay, say that, that's what their response is. It's not, when science, everything is theories, everything is svaris, nothing is concrete, but if something makes sense, if you go all over the world and see everyone has the same idea, there must be some source that they all agree to it. Al derech, what the Kuzri says about why is it that every single society in the world has 7 days a week. No one has a 5-day week, a 10-day. Where does 7 days come from? Every single society has 7 days. Where's it come from? Obviously from the Torah, from the 7 days of creation. Give another explanation. How come they chose the number? 7 is not a complete number. 10 is a complete number. 5, 100, episode. But how did it come that 7 became the standard way of measuring a week? So again, that's an example where the fact that so many people out there said that's a very strong scientific proof. It's not a proof that's foolproof. You can argue that it happened to happen, or maybe people were together and they spread out. You can argue back, but it's also a very strong scientific way of saying this makes sense to say so. Al derech zeh lahavdil over here as well.
So according to them, Mabul destroyed all of them?
No, that's next week. That's next week. Where did it go next week? Now we're just talking about one focus. How old they are. This is connected to that conversation. You want to see they're millions of years old? This argument says that they cannot be millions of years old. They have to be more recent.
You said the days of the week in learning so Purim, the first of it. So Purim, in that time they had a 10-day week.
Really? Interesting.
That's why Esther had 7 maids to know.
Very. Thank you. I repeat the Kuzri. Very good. That's a very good argument against the Kuzri. The Kuzri says what I said. The Kuzri said everyone has a 7-day week, and there was nothing differently. You're saying that in the Persian times it was different. Interesting. I would like to see that. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, even if it's not important, that's already an argument against the Kuzri. But good. Yeah. But that's first of all, it says it in the Gemara, yeah. But the reason why I would say the reason is because she had a hard time counting the days, because she has no one with her, no one to remind her what day we are. But yeah, that makes no sense. It's a big deal to remember what day in the week it is. But I guess what you're saying, but if there's such a Pirush out there, that's a very strong argument against.
7 days for 10 days.
No, the opposite. Because they measured weeks by 10 days. He's saying that's how they had units of 10 days at a time. That's why she would get thrown off counting her own 7 days. And therefore, she made herself a simmer by getting only 7 maids. That's what he's saying. It's a very nice problem, which makes a lot of sense thinking about it. Because why does she have to have? Because Chazal can say she had 7 maids to know when the Shabbos. But why should you have to know that? But it doesn't mean say she had to know because of Shabbos, if I'm not mistaken. But whatever, interesting. Good argument against the Kuzri.
Also,
We'll note. Huh?
She had it because whichever maid came on her Shabbos, she didn't want them to know that she acted differently on Shabbos than the other maids.
That's another Piddush. Say that is a famous shot. Yeah, but what he's saying is a different shot.
Yeah.
He's bringing up according to his
So
shot.
why it could be that she
Again,
was
I don't.
that
What
maid.
he's saying is not Chazal. Chazal don't say what he's saying, but he's saying an interpretation, which makes a lot of sense. What you're saying also makes a lot of sense. It's also an interpretation. Chazal takes 7 days for one Shabbos. Why the So you're saying what your interpretation, which you brought down, but his interpretation goes against what I said from the Kuzr. Very good. I like it.
And who is the Kuzri? The who?
That's a different class.
Wait, who did you say? I didn't hear.
I said the Kuzri, but who is a different
The
class?
Kuzri?
Yeah. Summary, again, the second question was, what's the age of dinosaur fossils? They say millions of years old. The answer, the Torah approach answer would be either A, they made a mistake in that calculation, or B, the Mabul was what caused everything to be calculated differently, or number 3, it was all created at a certain age, and that is why it looks like it's a millions of years old.